President Biden's social spending bill facing a final hurdle in the Senate. Democrats hope to pass it by Christmas, but that hinges on winning over two skeptical moderates, Joe Manchin and Sens Sinema. Here to talk about it are Steve Moore, a former economic advisor to President Trump, and Austan Goolsbee, a former chair of the Council of Economic Advisors under President Obama. And thank you so much for joining us today. And before I get to the spending bill itself, I want to talk about this continued civil war within the Democratic Party. And I want to read to you something that AOC wrote, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, in the New York Times. She wrote, "The entire reason that the Progressive Caucus gave their votes for the infrastructure bill was based on direct promises from the president, as well as direct promises from more conservative Democrat holdouts and from House leadership as well. So if those promises don't follow through, it's going to be very, very difficult for them to get votes on anything moving forward." Steve, I mean, that sounds like a threat. We've kind of seen it before. Is it going to work, or do you think Manchin and Sinema are going to save the day, if you will?
Well, if Manchin and Sinema are not welcome in the Democratic Party, I'm sure the Republicans will take them. Look, I think there's not just a civil war within the Democratic Party. I mean, this is a war between the two parties right now. I've never seen anything quite like it. That bill that passed in the House, which I think was one of the most atrocious bills I've seen in the 35 years I've been in Washington in terms of its damage that it will do to our economy and our small businesses. That bill passed without one single Republican vote. I mean, that's not the way this is supposed to be done. I think the last thing that this country needs right now is another $3 to $4 trillion debt bill and tax bill that I think will disable the economy. So I hope Sinema and I hope Joe Manchin, I know are watching this show, stand firm against this bill.
And Austin, I'm sure that you believe $3 trillion would help the economy at the moment. You, I presume, are supportive of that. But again, this civil war, that's getting in the middle of it.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think Steve overstates the case. We just passed a $1 trillion infrastructure bill that Steve opposed and thought was terrible, and it was done with bipartisan support with Republicans and Democrats. I think the Democratic Party has always been a bigger tent and tried to incorporate more divergent views, and that makes close votes like this more difficult, because when you got 50 votes in the Senate, you got 50 vetoes. I think on a technical matter, I don't think AOC's claim that the House only voted for it from promises in the Senate. If you remember, Joe Manchin said at the time he would not pre-commit to a bill that he didn't know what was going to be in it, and they hadn't specified what was in it. He wanted to get a CBO score. So I think it is going to be smaller than what the House passed, for sure, and we'll just have to see what it is.
Well, that CBO score came through, $367 billion over 10 years, but some people put that figure as high as $1.6 trillion. Steve, that's a huge discrepancy. I mean, how do you join those?
Well, you know, the bookkeeping that the Congress is doing and the accounting, I mean, if any private sector company tried to do this, they'd throw the CEOs in jail for fraud. I mean, what basically the Democrats are doing is they're counting 5 years of spending and 10 years of revenue and saying, oh, this thing pays for itself. And even with those sham accounting tricks, they can't get the numbers to add up. But look, yeah, the worst thing about this bill, in my opinion, is the tax increases. You know, we would have, according to the Wall Street Journal last week, if this bill were to pass, we would have the United States of America, the land of the free, would have the highest tax rates on small businesses in the world. How in the world is that going to create jobs and create a better economy for the United States?
Very interesting. I do want to give Austin a chance to rebut that. We don't have long left. What do you say, Austin?
Well, that's not true, and Steve knows that that's a misleading characterization of the bill. If you look at the tax cuts of the Trump $2 trillion tax cut that was unpaid for, it didn't generate the kind of GDP growth that Steve is talking about. The fastest growth year under Donald Trump before there ever was a pandemic was only 2.9%. So let's try to get back on an investment program where we can get health care costs down and child care costs down.
Well, meanwhile,
we did have the lowest unemployment rate and the lowest poverty rate in the history of the United States, Austin. So I like the record.
Because they inherited one of the lowest ever.
I've got to leave it there, guys. We've got to move on. I hope we get to continue this at a later date. I think one thing we can all agree on is that all eyes will be on Manchin and Sinema in the coming days. They hold the keys in their hands. Thank you both so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Hi, everyone. I'm Brian Kilmeade. I want you to do me a favor. I want you to click to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page. This is the only way that I know for sure that you're not going to miss any great commentary, any great news bites, any great interviews coming your way on Fox. You can get it all here on YouTube. So subscribe right now.